Hey gang, Joyce with Skipping Cas Farms here. I just finished a pretty significant daily chore. Well, not daily chore, but special chore today. We've been in a Category 4 drought basically through the winter and spring. Kids are just now getting out of school. We got some rain a couple of weeks ago and the grass went to seed overnight, literally overnight. And I had that special project where I had to clean all of that putty and fiberglass off of that sheet metal and get that sheet metal off of that trailer. So I was not able to do anything regarding my paddocks. Because, I mean, it literally seemed to. I mean, it wasn't literally, but within a very, very short period of time, right after we got that rain, everything went to seed, which makes sense because the grass had been stressed. It had been stressed for months. And all of a sudden, it had enough moisture in the soil to go to seed. And if it's stressed, it's going to go to seed because its primary function of existence is to produce the next generation, right? So what I did this morning, we've had about 6 days out of 8 where we had rain. We've had a couple of days of dry. I just now yesterday finished getting just about everything into my garden. And so I've just spent 2.5 batteries with my little Stihl FS 87, 67. Can't read, I've got my old glasses on. I guess it really doesn't matter. FSA 57. You can read that better than I can. And what I've been doing for the last several hours is weed eating. What? Why are you weed eating? That's what you got animals for. Yeah, exactly, except I've got sheep. Sheep don't like having seed pods in their eyes. It grew up overnight. I couldn't do anything about it, so I just left it. All of these seeds, grass seeds, have now gone to seed, right? These are all gone to seed. But while they were coming up and blooming, and before the seed was ripe, I left it. Now the seed is ripe. And guess who's been eating it for the last week or 10 days? My sheep and the lambs. Okay. But, so for the last couple of weeks, let's take a look here. I've been alternating. I started them out in that paddock there. That's when everything was just really going to seed and going to flower. And then I just cut everything off of this paddock here, with a few exceptions. Those tender grasses like this, I'm not exactly sure if this is orchard grass or Reed's Canary. I don't know my grasses that well. I apologize. But it is very tender. It's a warm season grass. It's very palatable, and the sheep love it. So I definitely wanted it to go to seed. And it is just now finishing the flowering stage and going into the seed stage. So I've deliberately left I don't know if you can see it here, right there, and right there. There's several big bunches of grass. Now, if there was a big bunch of grass that had seed heads on it, I didn't cut the seed heads down below the level of where the grass was. So basically what I tried to do with the weed eater was kind of give it a haircut. And so that's why this still looks like tumbleweeds, and it still looks like kind of a mess. But if you look at the fence line, that there's three lines there. They're on hook 2, 4, and 6. This three-way fence is on 2, 4, and 6. Okay. That was to try and keep the lambs in, those hoodlums. They were going through and climbing under and going in between. So I put 3 wires up, and that kept them in this paddock, and kind of got them retrained pretty well. Now this fence on this side over here is a 3-5. It's only a 2-wire fence, and they did a pretty good job of staying in this paddock. By the time they got into this paddock, the seed heads had already gone to seed, so they were eating the seed heads out of this paddock, whereas in this first paddock up here, they hadn't really gone to seed yet when they were in there. So that's why I weed eated this one first instead of that one, because just in case I need to put them in there, I've still got a lot of protein. And that's the best soil of these 3 paddocks. So this paddock over here is pretty thin. They've been in it, and the grass that's in this paddock is a lot less palatable. It does have the shade from the oranges, but I'm not going to put them back in this paddock next. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in this area. Now this area is some pretty good ground. We have just had, like I said, the last 10 days, 2 weeks, we've had the first rain we've had in a while. We do have a little bit of poison ivy in here. The sheep love it. We've got some of this grass. Like I said, I'm not sure if it's Reed's Canary or if it's orchard grass. They also like this. I have got little volunteer walnut trees all over everywhere. I usually leave them till they get to be about that size. Why? Because if there's a problem with any kind of a worm, what's the word I'm looking for? If the sheep have any kind of a population of worms in their gut, they'll just eat a little bit of the walnut, and it acts as an anti-helminthic, a wormer, a natural dewormer. And you can see here, there's a number of shorter grasses. There's more even coverage on the ground for the most part. Now when I come back over here, it gets pretty thin again. It goes back to this yellow grass, which they don't really care for much. But there is some Bermuda here, and back over on this low end, on the low end down here, where you can see can't see it on the screen too well, but there's the There's the weed eater and the pigtail. And there is some plantain that is coming up. Let me see if I can find some for you. There is some plantain that is just starting to come up. We got some bird's foot trefoil here and here. They'll enjoy that. Here's some real small plantain just coming up. And so I'll let them in here, but I'll probably only let them in here for a day. I don't want them to eat all the plantain out of here. And they'll eat their heads off. So I was planning on letting them in here maybe a little bit this afternoon and tomorrow, because they have been grazing next door and they've been eating the short grasses next door for the last few days. So that's what I'm doing. So basically what I wanted to explain, or I'll take just a minute now, and let's walk up here towards the fence line so you can see it a little better. I can't really see the screen very well when I'm walking because I do have to watch where I walk. I'm walking on new knees, so I have to pay attention to my footing more so than most. But so here we're coming up on the corner here, and you can kind of see, here's the corner on this side of the fence, and here's the corner on this side of the fence. And if I move the camera down kind of like that, I can't see it, but you should be able to see a pretty graphic change. And basically, you talk about, we have to be the predator for our herd when you're culling your animals. And I have a really small piece of property in terms of grazing space and only a few animals. And from that standpoint, I can't put effectively a high density 50,000 pounds per acre just anywhere. Why? Because I only have 4 sheep. And only, for the most part, it's only been 2 adults. And if I try to put them in that high a density, they're going to go through the fence. The lambs are going to go through the fence. There's just no way to really keep them in, even if I do a 3-way fence. And I don't have the equipment and the resources to do 3 or 4 or 5, 500 square foot, 400 square foot paddocks and move them 4 times in a given day, because I have to set up and leave set up a lot of my resources on a semi-permanent basis to be able to graze from here and go over to my neighbors. So I just don't have the resources for that at this point. But so what am I doing? I am weed eating behind my sheep in a manner that is kind of designed to not duplicate, because it's not going to be able to, but to kind of have a similar impact on the grass as putting 100,000 pounds per acre on there for a very short period of time. I've not been able to, they're not going to get trampled. It's not going to get quote unquote trampled down as opposed to being cut off. But I'll be bringing them back in here, and it will get ground contact, and there will be some more manure in here. Is it as effective and efficient? No, it's a whole lot more work for me, but it's a whole lot better for my soil. And my most important livestock on my property is the livestock in my soil. Bar none. And so that's what I'm doing. So that's why I went into this paddock here and weed eated behind it to try and get a mimicked impact of, at least from a seed stock standpoint, of a high density graze. But you'll also notice I cut it pretty high. I mean, some of that grass is still 12, 14, 18 inches tall where I weed eated it. So what's that all about, Joyce? Well, I cut very little blades. I did not try to go into, if there was a particular patch of grass that was pretty much, you can see the tips on that, I think. It's hard for me to see, but you can see there wasn't a lot of seed heads coming off of that particular batch, so I left it. And it depends on the type of grass and where I caught it in its cycle, right? So that's where we're at right now. I did my best to get the seed heads off of the fescue without cutting into the fescue too much. And I may very well have the sheep come back into this paddock either tonight and tomorrow morning. So I'll have to get them off of the property next door tonight. I may have them graze this in the morning, and then I'll have them graze this area for the rest of the weekend. So I've got to get that set up tonight or this afternoon. And I just took the weed eater and weed eated that line over there, so it'll be clear, a lot easier to work with. Trying to put fence up with, grass growing all over it is not a lot of fun. So that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm doing it. And your question would be, is it worth it? And I will tell you, absolutely. Well, what do you mean, Joyce? Why is it worth it? 2 years ago, I had virtually zero orchard grass, blue stem. I had probably 30 to 40% fescue. I'm now probably, at least especially in this area, up to about 60-70% fescue. I've got some bluegrass, I got some orchard grass, I've got what I will call higher level. They're grasses that are higher in the succession. They're higher in the succession as opposed to things like Bermuda grass and unpalatable, less nutritious forages. So my efforts are being rewarded. Now, how much of it is due to just to what I'm doing, and how much of it is due to just the sheep, I can't give you a quantified answer on that. I know it's going to be a bit of both, and I also know when I look at this paddock as is, and I look at this paddock as is, which one do you think you're going to get more forage consumption out of at this point in time? The one we're looking at. Because the sheep aren't going to fight all of this. They're going to get frustrated with fighting all of this. Now, I'm not going to make them fight it for a long time, but I may put them in here for a part of a day. They're used to it now. They're used to it now. And they're used to the seed heads. Now that it's dried out, the seed heads were going way down like this. and that was creating some issues. But now it's drying up a little bit, and the seed heads are now back upright. So they're grazing the seed heads themselves, and because the seed heads are back upright, they can graze down underneath it, and it doesn't create any issues with the seed heads getting in their eyes. Not so much. So that's where I'm at. That's what I'm doing. That's the constraints of my context, because I only have so much equipment, and I only have so much space, and I only have so many animals. So I'm trying to figure out a management style that works for me within those constraints. It's a lot more work for me, but I don't have a job. So if you're working full time and you're trying to build up your place on the weekends, it's not an option for you. But what I can tell you is it is working. With all that rain that we had that same rain 7 years ago, all of this area under here would have been underwater. There was no standing water at all. None. So I've got earthworm castings. I do still have bare soil. You know, I've got a lot of bare soil back down here where the chicken tractor is back there. I've got a lot of bare soil because last spring we had a very wet spring, so there were a lot of what I would call bulrushes. It wasn't really grass, it was water grass. And so we had a very wet spring. It came in, it outcompeted everything else, and then had a very hot late summer, and it all died off. And so I've got a lot of bare soil back there, and that's why. Starting early spring, you could see earthworm castings all over the place back there. And so I don't have the aeration problems, I don't have the compaction problems. I'm getting more organics in my soil, and I'm getting it to stay. And it's taken me years to get there. Doing it this way is a whole lot slower, but it's pretty cool. And my mouth runneth over. So I need to get that fencing up so I can get my critters back over here. And I'll wish you blessings for the day. Whatever you do, just keep chasing the dream. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. I'll be happy to share my thought process. My thought process is not very valuable, with the exception of the fact that I've spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours listening to I've watched virtually every non-marketing YouTube that Greg Judy's put out. I've watched hundreds of hours of Understanding Ag. I've watched a lot of Jim Garrick. I've watched a lot of Nicole Masters. I've watched a lot of different people and gleaned information. The challenge is they're almost all coming from a context of big places and cows, not small place and sheep. But the principles are still the same. So when you get information from a half a dozen different people, and they're saying a half a dozen different things, but they're all reflecting the same principles, then that gives you the tools to take those principles and those thought processes, like Ian Mitchell Innes talks about, using holistic management and mimicking nature, and take those principles and make them work for you, because working on my place every day is chaotic. I never do what I think I'm going to do, and it never works out like I think I'm going to work out, and I always have to finagle something. And that's what makes it fun for me. That's what makes it so rewarding. And that's what makes me so excited about looking at this paddock and seeing the the bluegrass and the orchard grass that is up and still standing, because 3 years ago there was none, virtually none. And to me that's just really exciting. So with that, gang, I will wish you blessings for the day, and whatever you do, just keep chasing the dream.